to another edition of Prime Hour on My Media Prime. In the program today, we are going to be looking at Cameroon's Intelligentsia, asking the question as to what they have been able to do to move Cameroon's development agenda forward. We are going to be looking at this topic considered by many persons as very, very important, with two panelists who are seasoned social entrepreneurs. They are in the house with us today to look at what the Intelligentsia has been able to contribute to the well-being of Cameroon as a nation. We are this evening receiving George, I call him George, Mr. Mofo. It's Mofo George. He is a social entrepreneur. Good evening and welcome.
Thank you, Kum, and hello to the viewers of My Media Prime, and hello to Dr. Nick Ngwanyam. I hope we are going to have a productive session this day.
Also, okay, we are glad to have you. We also are in the company of Dr. Nick Ngwanyam, who is a social entrepreneur and an educationist. Good evening and welcome, Doctor.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with all of us here. And today we'll be looking at this subject, which is it's a very passionate subject. And hopefully we'll not be talking politics. We'll try to see how we can explain some of these terms and explain some of these concepts so that we can understand and see where as a people we are and where we ought to be. It's very important. So we'll deal with try to understand that word intelligentsia and development.
Yes, Intelligentsia. I'll start with you, George, Mr. Mofo. Who constitutes the intelligentsia of a nation?
Thank you. Like Doctor said, we take certain concepts for granted and we don't allow those who are identified with those concepts to play their role, because we don't call them to responsible act vis-a-vis the high hopes that the society in which they live in have actually sacrificed in terms of constitute that core. Now you ask the question, the intelligentsia, who are they? This is what sociologists call a status class. A status class, which means that it's a group of persons highly educated and who are actually supposed to be contributing or guiding politics and the culture of their society, which means that these are people who have been able to attain a certain level of academic ladder in their career in terms of exposure. Most times it is one of the preconditions that you should definitely have an advanced university degree, even though it is not a precondition for you to become a member of that group, because what qualifies you as a member of that class that you can be identified as a member of that core is the role that you play in your community, which means that acquisition of the academic certificate is not enough. How do you contribute in moving your society positively? That is what qualifies you as a member of an intelligentsia. Also, it also goes to see how much innovation you have actually bring along in your society by way of, in other societies they will talk about patent. Patent is intellectual property. How much invention, how much things have you produced that is benefiting your community, especially thanks to your knowledge that you have acquired after a series of educational investment. So in essence, an intellectual or the intelligentsia are this core of people who are highly educated. I remember I didn't say highly intelligent, highly educated, because if you take an example like Wole Soyinka, who won the Nobel Peace Prize sometimes in 1986, he's a member of the intelligentsia in Nigeria, but he doesn't have a terminal degree. So that is what we are trying to situate.
Okay, let us go practical with you, Dr. Nick Ngwanyam. When they talk of the intelligentsia in a country like Cameroon, who are these persons specifically?
Thank you very much. I will just take some time off to go over what I understand by intelligentsia. But before we go into that specific word intelligentsia, let's step back a little bit and understand what we mean by intelligence.
Okay.
Because that word intelligentsia is a derivative from intelligence. Another word that we would like to understand is the word intellectual. Now listen, the other day I was watching a documentary on planet Earth, and the journalists were looking at gorilla, and they were saying the gorilla are intelligent. And what did they mean by the gorilla are intelligent? Somewhere along the line they said that a gorilla has the intelligence of a 2-year-old child, human baby. Now, and they said that the gorilla, they showed examples how the gorilla were using stones. That's they are using tools, just like the primitive man, using stones to crack nuts, palm kernels, to crack nuts and pick out the nut and eat. And they were using them in a very dexterous manner. They will not hit too hard to crush it. They will just kind of like tap it and then get the nut out without damaging the fruit inside. And then after that they will keep the stones and then use them for another day. And on another video they showed how this gorilla would take a stick and put it inside the trunk of through a crevice into the trunk of a tree and pull out some larvae and maggots from there to eat. Now, and then they showed also how they were making beds for themselves. So you see, the gorilla were using their intelligence to solve problems. That's the bottom line. So when we can understand that, then we now see when we use the word intellectual, it does not necessarily mean everybody who has gone to school. An intellectual is anybody, including our grandmothers and everybody who has, whether you've gone to school or not is not the issue, but you are able to use your mind, use your brains, use that intelligence to solve problems. That's the bottom line. Use that intelligence to solve problems. Then when we are talking about intelligentsia, we are talking about this other privileged class that have been able to go to school, because we understand that going to school gives you is that place where it gives you the ability to understand even more how things work, so that you can be able to use that understanding to be able to solve problems. So when you have knowledge and then you get an understanding and you use that knowledge and understanding to solve problems efficiently and effectively, that's called wisdom. And therefore it's expected that people of this intelligentsia, you have gone to school and you have learned the principles of how things work and you understand these principles very well, and you are going to use those problems to solve use those skills and understanding to solve the problems in your community. That's the bottom line. And that is, if you step back again and ask, why did God make us? You will realize that God made us, number one, to worship, to love him, to praise and worship him, to dominate the earth and to work. And so dominating the earth and working calls for that wisdom, calls for that intelligence, and all those things function based on principles and if you have developed the ability to tap into infinite intelligence, that's where creativity comes from. So to prove that you are of the intelligentsia, to prove that you are intelligent, you must be able to solve problems, and there's no way you can solve problems if you are a liar, if you tell lies, and whatever you study was a lie. It doesn't work, because it's about principles. Thank you.
Now, somebody who is watching us from Munyame, really, they have heard what you are saying, but practically speaking, who in our community should be identified as being part of the intelligentsia? You just say somebody who is intelligent.
No, that's what doctors says, which is not very correct. But I'm saying that let us not make this discussion to be too broad, and like we say, this is mass communication, so that it defeats the purpose of the viewer outside there. Let me give you a characteristics of somebody who has gone through school, and school has gone through the person. The person has to be honest, the person has to be human, and the person has to be humble. Now if you look at these 3 H, for someone who has gone to school and says what he does and does what he says consistently, because it's about science. And let me tell you, the evolution of knowledge started from what you might call belief system, religion. You know, let's call it revelation, where people, the Bible up to today, if you ask me the author of the Bible, till tomorrow, those are debate that has no reason, but it is based on the fact that it is believed that these were highly, what they call, revealed people who had supreme knowledge that was given to them directly by God. From the religious perspective, we move to the metaphysics. The metaphysics were these people who could sit and predict that it was going to rain and all of that. They had no basis, but just by watching the mixture of the cloud and the stars and all of that. This one evolved now to what we see today, which is called positive science, which is what they call empirical science, where people conduct experiment or they do research and all of that, and they publish certain things which are recurrent, which are repetitive, and which has the same, which means the same cause produce same effect, and you can be able to coordinate and build it up now to a certain bundle of knowledge, and then you do what they call now certification. So when you ask this question, you know, we have a prominent late gentleman who left this country some 20-30 years ago, Bernard Furlong, who wrote a masterpiece called The Genuine Intellectual. There you could see one of the tenets of whom he is described as a genuine intellectual is somebody who can be able to separate truth from falsehood. But the truth there is scientific truth, which means that, like what Dr. Nick said, what you acquire from school, no school will ever teach you to manipulate the people you are going to serve through lies telling. And again, when you go back, I want, so that we get this thing clear, when you go back to the days of the people we call them military dictators in during the Second World War, the Mussolini, the Hitlers, and all of that, you know, they use intellectuals to do what? To build the armament that they use, probably for the aggrandizement of the politician at that time, but that was the wrong use of intelligence. But vis-a-vis the person who was using at that time, he had a purpose. And going back even to on the other side, which is now positive, you know, when Stalin, because the word intelligence etymologically came from Russia, Stalin actually told himself that there is something beyond Earth, that he calls all his scientists that please come and tell us how can we move out of this globe Earth and go out of Earth to discover what is outside there, so that in case we are going to be attacked one day by the US, so that we can be able to build another thing out. And Yuri Gagarin told Stalin what he will take, and behold, they gave him all what he will take, and they had to land or go out and go to space. The same thing once Kennedy came after the Russian went to space. He also gathered his own intellectuals. I said, what will it take for a man to land in the moon from the US? And I want this to be done within a particular period in time. What I'm saying is that, you see, these are knowledgeable people that a politician calls and design, because if you look at one of the philosophers who define who an intellectual is that is somebody who can be able to believe in an idea and do everything to ensure that the idea prosper. That's why we now talk about ideology. And so from that perspective, I want to say that let people not be afraid, because I see people, especially in this country, you want to belong to a political party and you are moving from, you cannot consistently defend the ideology of that party, talk less of even formulating a consistent ideology. And so we start finding ourselves flirting from one angle to another, because from you first of all did not believe, you are not honest that we identify ourselves on that party line based on conviction, okay, based on attitude, belief, and choice.
Based on conviction, I want Dr. Nick, I want us to come to Cameroon. The Intelligentsia, you are aware, you've lived in Cameroon for a very long time. Do you find a problem with Cameroon's intelligentsia? Yeah. Can you also say you could trace that to their formation, the process of training?
Yes, we have a huge problem with the intelligentsia in Cameroon, and it's the same problem you find everywhere in Africa, but in Cameroon it's acute. And we need to be true to ourselves and face it. You know, when you go to school, you learn. You learn, and the purpose of learning is such that you get understanding, and then you also get skills to be able to solve problems. But you see, our school system was not designed to help us to solve problems. So we sent a lot of young people through our school system, which turned them into something else but the intelligentsia that we would have liked to have. That's the problem. In our school systems, what we are teaching now, it calls to question the curricula that we are using. Our curricula is based on children learning based on the when, the when, the who, and the what questions. But that's wrong. That's what the white man gave us, because that kind of teaching or learning does not help you to solve the problems in your environment. So you end up with these degrees, but you are basically uneducated in the sense that you cannot solve problems in your community. But the real curriculum, what we ought to be studying, we should be studying based on a curriculum modeled on the what, the why, and the how. If you are going to study cocoyams, why are you studying cocoyams? Why? You are going to study weather. Why are you studying the weather? If you are going to you see a cell phone, for instance. Okay, let's study the cell phone. Why are we studying the cell phone? How does it work? All those things. So these are questions that when you train children to do this and answer these questions and so on, they become intelligent enough, and they begin to interact with their environment in an intelligent manner. That is, they open up, they interact with their environment and see and take stock of the problems that are in the environment, and they can analyze these problems. They have a feeling nature. They can tell a lot about what is going on, and then they internalize those things, study them, understand them, think about them, burn the midnight candle, set up some examples, some experiments, and try to solve those problems. Then they come up with solutions, workable solutions, and they can bring those workable solutions, which are at the level of the individual, the community, of the government, and then effectively solve problems. So if you go to school and you cannot be able to do this, then technically what you did was you went to school, you studied economics, but you didn't understand the principles of economics. You studied management, you didn't really understand what you were doing. You studied a lot of things and you didn't understand what you were doing, because to solve problems you must make use of those principles. And therefore you end up with a master's degree, which is a lie. That is the problem. The question is, the master's degree that you have, if you took another person or a young man like you who studied in South Korea and has the same master's degree with you, can the two of you solve the problems in the same manner? That is the problem. And therefore, if you go through a school system which deceives you with an empty paper and you don't have these skills, you basically are a liar as far as those principles are concerned. That's why you would understand that we have a lot of the professors are lying, everybody's lying, because you are lying because you are faced with a problem. Instead of solving the problem, you are praising the president, you are singing songs and so on. That is not the issue. Even when the president gives you a piece of job, he wants you to solve the problems for him, not sing songs about him. That's not what he engaged you for. So we see people going round and round, and I would say that the intelligentsia in Cameroon has failed.
They have failed, Judge Mr. Mofo. Have they failed because they lack adequate mastery of the skills and knowledge acquired in school, or the fact that the environment does not permit them to be able to efficiently put what they have studied into use? Because we have persons who have gone to school in Cameroon and cannot perform or provide solutions to problems, but we see them performance out of Cameroon.
Again, the word failure is relative also, because we can use one of those things we talk about, the ABC of failure, where people accuse, blame, and condemn or criticize that they didn't have this particular reason. But I will go for what I call attitude, belief, and choices. When you choose to go to a knowledge factory, which is a university, it means that you have shown certain material endowment, and you've decided to sacrifice excellence in terms of ensuring that the people who pass Let me, probably the viewers outside will not know that every 3 months the government gives to university lecturers something they call research grant. Those who are assistant lecturer, they give them 350,000. Those who are lecturers, they give them 600. Those who are what they call associate professor, they give them, I think, something around 800, and then full professor they give a million 50,000. This is what they call research grants. No doubt, it might not be much, but I think if somebody or a group of professors or university done what they call intelligentsias, they sit down and compile a good research proposal that solves the problem of the world. Look at it today. The whole world is talking about COVID-19. Do you know why we are not so much prone towards what they call curative, and most people are going in only to find or to come out with a vaccine? Because that's where the money is. Curative, with the other curative, it will not fetch because it will be easily replicated and the rest. But with a vaccine, people will have what they call patent rights. And that patent right will be given to them for some years. And you see the whole world, from the United Nations, WHO, and the rest, will put in so much money in that laboratory. Let me also say this. We are talking about the environment. Do you know that Harvard University has not less than 6 airlines out of the research that they sell to companies? What we are saying here is that patent, if we have, because again, we might be blaming our intelligentsia, they cannot work also in isolation. They work also with vis-a-vis the business community, what they call the money backs. Because come to think about it, if you see the Silicon Valley today in the US is also generating a lot of billionaires, the Facebook and the other persons. It is because the Stanford University gave a foundation where a lot of those guys had a platform to test all their artificial intelligence, their IT skills and all of that, preparing them for the world. Ask yourself today, can you sit here between you and I? By the way, just for the information of the viewers outside there, the university, which is called the Modern University in this country, started as a French foundation before independence around 1958, down there in Yaoundé. Before we moved to Yaoundé, University of Yaoundé, before today it's called Yaoundé University 1. It tells that originally the people who actually, let me say, gave independence in this country, they were not first of all thinking about even building an intelligentsia which is authentic, which is Cameroonian. Meanwhile, when you go to a country like Nigeria, where you have Suka and the rest that have a history of 100 years old, and you can be able to test, ask yourself, can you sit here, count even one patent that our intelligentsia they have been able to send out there that can be quoted in terms of a discovery that is solving a human problem or Cameroonian problem? That is what we are saying, that it is a question that we should be able to ask ourselves. That, and the last time that there was a problem out there in Boya, or the problem of Igbo cocoa that was absent, and there's a faculty of agriculture and veterinary science in the University of Boya.
Yes, is that?
No, let us even talk about where the factory, the knowledge factory is, which is the university, because the intelligentsia are supposed to be a concentration of people who privilegedly they are supposed to be based working on provision of knowledge. Now, when all of those things are not happening, the society will blame that. They'll say, well, you guys are not serving us a purpose, because if you are supposed to be the torchbearer, you are not influencing policy. You know, that is where they start doubting the relevance of education.
Okay. Some persons think that the intelligentsia in Cameroon has been rendered beggarly by politicians, but here, do we blame the politicians who do this, or the members of the intelligentsia who go cap in hand begging for positions to be able to serve rather than teaching in the amphitheaters?
Thank you very much. Let me go over 3 things, and then so that you understand. To understand what we are discussing, let's get three issues in mind. Number 1, the persons. That's the intelligentsia, the persons. Then let's get the environment in which they are working. That environment means a lot of things. The politics, there's whatever. And then the other thing that we need to talk about is the resources. When George was talking a moment ago, he mentioned that our own intelligentsia don't come up with patterns, and then he mentioned quite some very important things in America. But let us scale down the problems. We don't want to go to the moon. Let's scale down the problems to what we see every day in our own environment, and find out why our own intelligentsia are unable to solve problems that are at our reach. For instance, can you tell me, Mr. Kum, why is it that we have schools of agriculture with engineers of agriculture for over these years who are unable to grow rice and fish, and we have to be importing? That's what we are talking about, basic things. Why can't you do that? Why is it that we have ministers of towns, city engineers, whatever, and you are unable to label your streets? You are unable to say, this is house number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. You see, it's very difficult for even the security people to come to your house at night and help you, because they don't know where they are going to. And even if you ask them to describe it, describe your house to someone even by day, they'll have a hard time coming there. Why? Because we have an intelligentsia that is not helping. We make them ministers, make them what, but if they're not thinking out of the box, they can't solve the problems. Basic problems. Why is it that our police officers and gendarmes cannot do fingerprinting in a crime scene and come up with a criminal? Why must you catch people and beat them up until they are bleeding for you to extract something or something like that? Why don't you use intelligence, that knowledge, and do things? You see, that's what we're talking about. Why is it that we cannot clean our streets? Why is it that we still pee on the road, throw banana peelings? Somebody is driving a very nice, luxurious car, he's eating banana and then throws the peelings on the tar. What you call yourself an intelligent person? There is something fundamentally wrong with us. Are you getting what I'm saying? Yeah. So yes, we might want to build airlines someday, come up with patents someday, but that's somewhere out there. But why can't we solve our basic problems? You see, COVID-19 just came up. There was a medical doctor and his team in Senegal that came up with diagnostic kits and so on. Okay, they're going somewhere. You remember last time we were here on this set, and then I think there was an issue of some children in a technical school who were trying to make some masks, and the minister came and scolded them. That we kill ingenuity in our people. We kill children who are trying to solve problems. So again, I would say that if our intelligentsia is not awake, is because the way we went to school, our minds are not tuned to solving problems. We are tape recorders. You just recite something, and then they give you a past paper or something like that, and then you come out, and then I don't know what else you do. But that's why everybody's looking for a government job, because out there, if you don't have the skills out there in the private sector, you cannot survive. You need a government place where you can just hide in a big office and you are air conditioned and you earn some money for doing nothing. That's the serious problem. So we have to change our educational system and train children who have the capacity to solve problems. If children don't have the capacity to solve problems, it's a lie.
It's a lie. Good evening, gentlemen. An intellectual is not necessarily that individual with an avalanche of high-sounding academic qualifications in his educational repertoire. Rather, it is that person whom, even with the little knowledge he may have acquired, is capable of creating a positive impact in his community, his level of education notwithstanding. In Cameroon, we have many certificates holders, but who unfortunately are not intellectuals, because they have absolutely nothing to show except for the high-sounding grammar they speak on radio and TV programs. Alpha is writing from Kumba. Now, I raised the issue of whether politics has rendered our intelligentsia beggarly, or the fact that most of them would leave our classrooms and amphitheaters for political positions.
Unfortunately, it was supposed to have been the reverse, because here we are talking about a foundation. The doctor was talking about a principle. The political leaders, they don't govern out of nothing. They are governed. They govern people based on what you call ideology or some guiding. To produce a constitution of a country, it doesn't take the market woman or whatever. It takes people who have gone to a certain level of conceptual and theoretical knowledge exposure to be able to come out with those things. But when you come to look at the fact that they go into building that constitution with a mind of what you call that is a document that they are building that is not worth a toilet tissue, because to them it is serving an individual, and that is the problem that we have. We make people stronger than a country, and when you start having that type of scenario where individuals are stronger than institutions, you find people who don't have any sustainable institutions. So you have, unfortunately, what is actually happening, you discover that because of examples that are set by individual, because there is no clear-cut stability of the institution, because the institution now will build on what they call culture. We don't have what we call now a work culture. If you go to some countries, especially, unfortunately, again, we always be quoting from out of Cameroon, where people will actually be calling themselves, in fact, they are embarrassed to hear that Cameroonians they work 8 hours a day, and even that 8 hours a day that we are talking about, 8 hours a day, is 8 hours roaming around, not even producing. It is so that culture has made people to think that if somebody, remember, we have made it in such a way whereby even the posts which are given to people, they are owned by somebody that he just put his hand in his back and then move it and say, okay, I will give you this, and then you take and go and help your community because you become an elite by decree, not by that type of merit where you have been able to produce something. And then you find a situation where you go to a university, a department, or what you call a faculty structure, where you find that two lecturers or professors, they don't talk to each other because their aspiration is the political position that they're looking up to. When they are from the same community of the same village or the same neighborhood, they start thinking that one is impeding or making the other one not to shine, and so in order for them to collaborate now and produce what is worthy as a group of intellectuals, they become now competitors and they don't collaborate. So all of this one, whether we say we want to attribute it to politician remote controlling, it is supposed to be the reverse. I am saying Donald Trump is a Donald Trump because people had to sit down and conceive a policy that he is using as a blueprint for him to be able to call his own orientation that he used now to sell a political ideology that he is selling to get the vote from the people. And until we start reaching that point where we see people sit and conceive what they call a political manifesto, which is based on problems that the average person feel there. Most of the time you see the people who are even calling themselves politicians. The average person there does not even care to know where you are coming from, where you are going to, because by some token or tokenism, there are going to be some people free to fill the National Assembly and to fill the Senate. Okay. So at that point now you discover that you are even somebody with a PhD holder, you go to Senate, you don't propose any policy called what you call you blame now, they say no, there's a what you call obese majority and the rest, but the obese majority also has intelligentsia in their own camp.
That is a question I'm asking Dr. Nick, whether politics is that Waterloo for the intelligentsia in Cameroon. That is how ever intelligent you are, once you get into politics, seemingly you lose your values.
No, politics is not. There is. You remember when I was talking to you about the environment? There's something about the environment in where we live, and politics is one of the elements in that environment. But this is the issue. You see, you remember those PhD people who are crying in the ministry? That they had not been employed and ruling, and there was a woman who wanted to kill herself.
And after they were employed, they
made banners and they were singing and dancing to the president. That was very, very embarrassing to the whole country, and it just shows who we are. You know, you are not supposed to go to school, and government is not supposed to give you jobs. No. You should go to school and then be able to create your own jobs and create your own wealth. And because we fail to our school system fails to do that, this is what has happened. When we got independence, the first institutions trained the people who were supposed to run our government offices for us. And then the first people who came out of the universities, as long as you were intelligent enough to understand a couple of things, you filled in post, not necessarily because you had the capacity, but just because probably you could read and write. That's why it was easy to see, bankers, for instance. You have a degree, a first degree in English, and you're the bank manager or something like that. And so people just kind of like fill spaces, but. And when you go to our universities, you have these boxes that you have to fit people in. It doesn't matter how many of you are coming, you have to go either to geography, to history, to something or something. And then over time, the government offices have been saturated. Every place has been saturated, and then children didn't know that they could do something better. And then what happened was, if you had a first degree and there was no spot, then you went up to have a master's in the same thing, hoping that because you had a master's, you could outweigh on the others and get the position. And then it didn't happen. Then you went up to PhD, and then we now end up with PhDs who are roaming the streets and crying. So it's a problem of capacity, training children to be able to solve the problem.
So you think in Cameroon politics has nothing to do with the performance or the output of the intelligentsia?
I was trying to describe this so that we see what is driving it.
Okay.
So, and then we've got to understand a principle of economics to which comes to play, the demand and supply. Okay? There are so many young people on the market looking for those jobs. And there is oversupply of young people who are looking for jobs, and the jobs are not there. So once that happens, I'm twisting techniques come in, and then you begin to see people now singing the glory of this minister, singing the glory of this president, singing that, and so on. So there is this clientelism that comes in and creates a new phenomenon altogether, and that's what we are observing in Cameroon. So you see people who have gone to school who cannot stand on their feet, and therefore they are using this cloak of politics. They use it to blackmail, they use it to seek for things, and so on. Then now we all just become praise singers looking for bread. That is the problem.
We are praise singers looking for bread. George, Mr. Mufo, the intelligentsia and our political system. We know of how ELECAM functions. I'm sure ELECAM is not manned by a cream of dollars. They are persons who are well schooled. We know other institutions that handle our activities, democratic activities in the country. We equally know of the political platforms that are animating our political life in Cameroon. Do you think that the intelligentsia that is found within our political system in Cameroon is helping to shape and give Cameroon a type of political system that could be revered across the globe?
Unfortunately, I will hesitate to answer in the affirmative, but the reality is what we are saying here is not to paint a very dark image of the intelligentsia, especially the ones in Cameroon. The issue here is that we are talking about facts which are verifiable, because when you find a community that is rife with a conflict, rife with poverty, rife with diseases, rife with all type of negatives of development, you start asking, where are the solution providers? And unfortunately for the intelligentsia, their responsibility is first and foremost to their community. Yeah, education is only good. In fact, I have a good friend who always defines somebody who is educated as being one who would have forgotten all what school taught you, and you are solving and you are doing the things that people are happy in your community. That's when you can be termed an educated person. But when you go around quoting bombastic language and talking about formulae and all of those things,
Western theories,
and you are not relevant to your community, so go back to even those institutions that are man. Come by itself, every person will tell you that Cameroon has some of the best institutions in terms of design. But you show the weakness of the individual, and somehow I actually see it that it's probably also a deliberate plow. When you look at the ruling class today, in fact, probably the three first personalities of this country, they never studied in any university in this country. And so they might never have been able to have a feeling of that type of nationalistic tendency that, you know, when you are studying out of a problem environment, your worldview is based on citing example on that you are, every example that is universal, you are trying to contextualize it from where you are coming from. Probably I never went to any university in Cameroon. Nyat never went to any university in Cameroon. The other headmaster of a National Assembly, I don't know where it ended. But I mean, these are real. We cannot. But the unfortunate thing, like I am saying, is that you have what we call now some young intellectuals who are coming up now. They have also, because of some, again, when you compare also their month-end stipend, is also an embarrassment. Because when you compare the take-home of those of most of the university lecturers, that's why you find that, especially when they say Cameroon has the highest number of migrated medical doctors in just one town in the world, more than all the doctors operating trained by queues. You start asking what happened that they had to move, because you cannot have somebody who would have gone to school for 6-7 years and then you give that person a salary of around 300,000, whereby his own colleagues who went through that same mental process, they are receiving 5 if not 10 times that amount. I expect them to stay back here. But again, these are political decisions which, unfortunately, the people who coin and put all of what we call this barren, there are people who did not have even the opportunity to also go to universities. Because you find that somebody who graduated from a professional school, and you are teaching political professionalization or something, you would also discover that they have also contributed in bringing down this country. Because when you find somebody, because he is a tax inspector or whatever they call them from ENAM, deciding on advising the politicians on how much to pay intellectuals in this country, you start asking yourself that why is it that magistrates don't complain most of the time, but you find most of the time the people are complaining their teachers. A country that first of all makes their teacher to be the last of the scum. Meanwhile, these are the people who are supposed to be ensuring, guaranteeing continuity of knowledge development. Then there is a problem.
And there is a problem. What we have in this country, I have BrigadeAntiSardinar. In this country, mediocrity is what we have in the country. Good evening. I'm Kanjo. I'm watching you guys from Boya. Good evening to you, Kanjo. And good evening to you too. Sirs, it's not about the number of hours. It's about speed and accuracy, quality time, and to be diligent. Felix is writing from the United Arab Emirates. Good evening to you. Hello, Mr. Liu and the panelists. Before the coming of Western way of administration. Hello, Mr. Liu and able panelists. Africa is as a whole has a serious problem with intelligentsia. Those who planted this is the Europeans. They gave us a system of education that will consistently keep us wanting and depending on them in terms of transforming our new materials and remain perpetual consumers of finished goods from Europe and supply of raw materials. We are finding it difficult to take ourselves out of this mental slavery embedded in us by the Europeans. Pius is writing from Douala. Let's look at the intelligentsia and the reconstruction of our system of education. You said earlier on, as Pius just said in this message, that the system of education that we are using today was fashioned and given to us by the Europeans, but we are 60 years away from independence, and most of our ministries of education across the board, most of the institutions handling issues of education are manned by seasoned educationists who are also a part of the intelligentsia? What have they been doing all this while?
That's a very tricky question. Even before I dwell into it, when Mr. Mufa was talking a moment ago, he said that the three top persons in this country, they didn't study in this country, and there are some problems that we can ascribe to the top, but there are some problems for which those of us at the bottom, at the grassroots, we have to take responsibility. It's our responsibility to solve our problems. When you go to school, it's not His Excellency President Pobia who tells you what to study. You should be able to find out, if I'm studying, what am I studying? Why am I studying it? How am I going to study? How am I going to use it to solve problems? How am I going to use it to make money? These are questions that you ask yourself before you go. Don't just go into things, and after that you blame the top. And so we have a problem as a people, not knowing what we want and we do things and we don't know why we do the things that we do. That's the greatest problem. And therefore, we get into a situation where everything is just not working. And the time has come now for us, as you said. The last man that you were reading a comment a moment ago, that guy, he's correct. And the other guy too, who defined intelligentsia for us, he did a good job. And so we should step back now and find out what went wrong. A moment ago, I was trying to give some examples. We've had ministers of town planning all these years. So why?
Our towns not organized.
Why are the towns not organized? Why do you want to blame the President Pobia because the towns are not organized? He's giving you ministers, giving people, organize the towns so that they are like the parties that you go to, but nobody seems to know what to do. And that brings us to say something. People, administrators, managers and so on, everybody thinks that it's money, money, money. It's not money. The problem is not money. You see what happened to COVID money. You give a lot of money, but it's all swindled and the problem is not solved. So we have a lot of people, the intelligentsia, who don't understand the problems, and even when they understand the problems, they're so dishonest that they are not ready to solve the problems. That's a huge problem there.
We have been talking about is it a competent-based approach, output-based approach for years today. Why can't those managing educational institutions in this country judge the output of what is coming?
Let me just say something. Doc.
Yes.
Keep away. Even let us stay with the intelligentsia.
Yes.
Have you visited some of our state universities? The hygienic conditions there, the dilapidated buildings which are abandoned, and you hear the quantity of monies that is given to them as subvention from the state. This is a clear example to tell us that our intelligentsia by themselves, they are not. You could give benefit of doubt that our politicians who are ministers probably they have different priority, but I'm saying that for students who are at higher educational level, because that is the core where the intellectuals are molded. Yes. Then you find that a student is entering the university, is sitting in the classroom, papers everywhere, people are coming to eat whatever and throw leaves everywhere. The mindset, that's where it starts getting from there outside.
We have a problem on the mindset.
But the problem is, why
let me just cue there and correct, and because we are here, listeners, we are here we're not just discussing for the sake of discussing, we're trying to bring out some of those things so we begin to see how we correct ourselves. And Mr. Mufo just mentioned something here about debt in our classrooms. And to give you our experience at St. Louis, I'm giving this experience to say that parents, please, teach your children to be responsible at home. You see children who come even at university level, who are studying medicine, you tell them don't litter and they litter. You clean the class of them and they still find reason to throw granite peelings and paper all over the world. We're just terrible. I don't know what is wrong with us. I'm sorry about that. We have an attitude problem.
Hello, good evening. It's Henry from Yasa Intelligence and Matters from Level to Level. And if we ourselves can use our method to develop Cameroon, what then do we expect from the top? But my question remains.
Yes, go ahead.
Our system of education.
Yeah.
Why do we seem not to find a problem with it if it does not work all this while?
It's about the people manning that system now. if they don't wake up and say, let us change it, then nothing will change. But already in the Ministry of Higher Education since 2002, they noticed that there was a problem that needed to be corrected. And that's why the section called the Private Higher Education was created, to try to come up with a breed of youths that will be able to solve these problems. But even then, old habits die hard. So we create schools now, and most of the teachers that were teaching there were borrowed again from the state universities, and then the bad habits of the state universities were transmitted to these new universities. And you can't blame them very much, because whoever is in Cameroon, we have been doing a lot of theory, no laboratories, and even when you bring the labs, the equipment is there, people don't know how to use it. So there is this huge barrier that we have to overcome, and the educational system has to be changed. You remember that document I was circulating sometime about the Foundation for Curriculum Change in Africa and Cameroon? It's basic. We have to change what we call school in Cameroon today, and to change that, you must change the curriculum. And when we change that curriculum, we will not have the kind of teachers that we'll have to teach, which means we'll have to actually import some teachers, let's say from places like India, from retired teachers from Germany, from all those places, to come and infuse us this other concept that we have been missing out on for 60 years. Because even if we change the school system and try to use the same teachers to teach, it will not work. It will be putting new wine in old wine skins.
Okay. Let me also hitch on what which I'll be at variance a bit with Doctor there. This should be a very rich exchange now. There is a concept called change, and there's another one called innovation. The principle of education remains the same. The foundation of education remains the same. Now, what we actually are moving now is adapting it to the context, which means 1 + 1 will always remain 2. That's the principle. But now, to what? Come, look at it this way. You send a child to nursery 1 or infant 1, whichever you want to call it, and the person who is teaching the child says 1 counters, what they call counting stick in general language, and there are counters or counters. 1 counters, 1 counting stick plus 1 counting stick equals to 2 counting sticks. This child goes back home, and the mother says that, what did you study today? I studied that 1 counters plus 1 counters equals 2 counters. 2 counters. Then the mother says, okay, these are puff balls. 1 puff balls plus 1 puff ball equals to what? The child look at the border like this. But you just say you study that 1 counter plus another counter equals to 2 counters. So 1 puff ball plus another puff ball is what? The child said, my teacher did not tell me that one. My teacher told me that counters.
Yes.
You see, it is not the problem now, it is the lack of innovation now on the part of the person who is delivering, because it makes the child now look like a tabula rasa that he was just there to pour in the child's mind. So he didn't even allow the child to also generate, because it's about inquiry, it's about asking. We're talking about the what. The child should be able to be given time now to also ask his own question or our own question to that same teacher who said that 1 counter is 2 counter. That is the well of that teacher. So what is the well of that child? There was a video that came out that we were talking about someone who discovered the River Niger or Mongo Park and all of that. That a Nigerian woman said, up to today, what do we still see in our work in primary school? A for apple, B for book, this and that, all of that. So that child has in his mind that every time you see B is book, every time you see A is apple. The child's mind is not open that A could also mean what letter that is beginning with A and all of that.
Your mind is stuck on apple.
So you understand, which means you are using the telephone every day. You go back to your house and you try your phone. Your young man who is curious come to pick that phone. You hit that child and say, "Why are you touching my phone?" And all of that. You are already killing curiosity. So the education at that point has not failed. It's based on the fact that we don't provide that avenue where that inquisitiveness comes. So I'm focusing on the fact that our curriculum or the curriculum of the world has the principle, but it's the issue of delivery now, which we are supposed to innovate, because change by whatever thing, we are living in a globalized world, and we should be able to train a child who should be able to cope in Cameroon and cope in Nigeria and cope in Europe and all whatever. Okay, how do you explain that people live here, train in their own medical school, but they are not performing well in our hospitals here, but they go out there in Europe and they are doing exceptionally well and they're running big hospitals?
Okay, well, let's take a listen to a video of an African who is telling us what our system of education should do for us.
He realized that if we take away Africans from practice and move them to theory, we will be creating a labor force for ourselves. So they brought a school system which did not promote thinking but promoted remembering. Say that again. They brought a school system which did not promote thinking but promoted remembering, for the sake of creating good employees who don't think but can remember. Okay?
Right.
So they brought a school system where you learnt useless things. Homo habilis. Who was Shaka's mother? What is the longest river in Africa? Tell me, what is the use of that rubbish? Okay? So you went into school and you were studying how many times Muslims pray per day.
Yeah.
You wake up at night to study how many times Muslims pray per day. So you memorize photosynthesis. You memorize how many teeth a dog has. You memorize everything. And at the end of the day, what did they produce? They produced someone who was a container of useless knowledge. A container of useless knowledge.
Right.
That is why today we have doctors who have been independent for 55 years. Have you heard that there are vaccines being made by Zambian doctors? So you walk out of medical school as someone who knows when to give Panadol, how to take temperature. You are a doctor who is a Panadol distributor. And it's not your fault, the education system. Okay? You have professors in this country, in the School of Forestry at Copperbelt University.
Yeah.
We have lived with Mukula tree since God created the world. All they know is how to label the parts of the tree. They don't know the value of the tree.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So when this mission succeeded, then they came to set up industries. And when they set up industries, who was the laborer? The graduate from the School of Remembering. Okay. Someone who would remember how to dig, where to dig. Someone who would remember how to cut a tree and how many pieces. Someone who would remember. And they rewarded you with a bribe called a salary, and we became comfortable.
Right.
So when they come into Africa, what are they coming to do? They are coming to reap your resources, and you are a means of production. So this is what made Africa poor.
Okay, Dr. Nick, is that what we have in Africa today?
Yes, I mean, I don't know where this video came from. It describes us perfectly. I mean, we could talk here for 1 week. We will not be able to beat what that man is saying. And there was another video like that circulating in French from somebody from West Africa somehow in French, saying almost a similar thing. And he has put the hammer on the nail. And we could stop talking now and just listen to that guy again, and he would have said everything, and we'll just go home and ask the question, what are we going to do about what he has said? Why must we change? And how are we going to do it? I think that's what we should be looking at. Because what that man is telling us, he's not a Cameroonian, he's a Zambian. He's saying they failed. And what he's saying about Zambia is true of all of Africa. So if you are picking any bones with me or whatever, please forgive me. It's that man who said it. I learned it from him. I'm not the one who said it. We have to do something. And when next time someone says he's an agric officer, you say, show me the rice. If he doesn't show you the rice, tell him he's not an agric officer. If he says he's an agric officer, you tell him, show me the chicken. So we must be productive. If you are not productive, then we are heading for the dungeon.
Okay, we are heading for the dungeon. Good to be Mr. Liu and the great minds on the panel. I highly appreciate the topic being discussed. It's usually said it's better telling the bitter truth. And in our discussion context today, I will say the intelligentsia in Cameroon is apparently not delivering the goods. No matter how fast a system runs in the wrong direction, it's never too late it never gets to its destination. Direction is far better than speed. And the truth is that our Cameroonian intelligentsia is running fast in the wrong direction. The masters and PhDs are of little value if community-centered problems cannot be solved. Okay, thank you very much. This one says, Honorable, we talk of change. What are the steps forward? Because everyone in Cameroon behaves like wolves in white cloth. Still, Henry at Yassa, because people are more aware of our old system and lack the loop of change. Now, your reaction to that outing by, I'm sure he is a Zambian intelligentsia, member of the Zambian intelligentsia.
There is a course I did called African Entrepreneurship, and the foundation of that course was based on the fact that there is a country in this world called Haiti. Haiti is in the same planet that the richest country and the strongest, America, United States, is found. Because Haiti is populated by black people. They have the same problem like Benin, Togo, Cameroon, and the other black people. So this, without being pejorative and the rest, this person was curious to find out whether is there a problem with our skin color that also affects our mental ability to innovate. And the person also did the same study. Do you know there are black people also in China? There are black people also in Russia. And the person discovered that if you cut across all of those persons, coincidentally, they are taking the same. But again, on the optimistic perspective, so that we don't reinforce fatalism, when that man says, all of us seems to know what the problem is, but where is the solution? The solution, we are saying that what are our strengths as a continent? There's no reason why we should move from agriculture, which is what is actually seemingly going to also derail us. We skip from the primary, we don't even reinforce the industrial base, which means normally we should move from primary to secondary before go tertiary. You will discover that there is a mass movement from those who cannot find themselves in the primary sector of agriculture and cattle rearing. They jump to go now to issues of what the services. Yes, somebody says consultant here. This is but we have not actually consolidated by transforming our raw material, and this does not take what we will call. I saw the other day a young person with a remote play with a toy aeroplane. That is the type of thing that a university should be able to. Notwithstanding whether a person has an A level or not, and you said that cool, there's no reason why we should have a polytech, and we will have problems. I was still importing toothpick. There's no reason why we should have a veterinary school, and then we're having problem of a shortage of chicken. It's an aberration. It's an aberration.
It's an aberration. Cameroon is primarily an agricultural country. We are involved in the production of banana, palm oil, rubber, and our mothers.
We're not an agricultural country. When you talk about agricultural country, it means that you are talking about in terms of production and productivity. America is the first in terms of production of maize and corn and all of those things. We are just.
I'm coming. I was going to tell him. I was going to tell Doc that if you go across our backyards in the villages, almost all of our mothers are engaged in subsistence farming. Now, should Cameroon not have been counting very many agricultural schools to empower this sector?
Now, thank you very much. You see, when Mr. Mofo was talking a moment ago, you know, he was making allusion to the kind of industries that are out there. We have the primary industry, the secondary industry, and the tertiary industry. And first things first. And when you build a story building, you have a foundation, and then on that foundation you build the first level, the second level, and the third level. When you are building the third level, you do not remove the foundation. You do not damage the second floor. That's what George was saying a moment ago. What are we saying in concrete terms? America is the largest economy in the world, is a superpower and everything. But watch my lips. They grew to that point because they started with the right agriculture. And that agriculture has continued to improve until today. And America, with all her nuclear weapons, will be nothing without agriculture. Because people must eat. And their agriculture is such that they have food security. If there were to be a drought now in America for I don't know how many years, they have enough food that has been stored in the underground silos that will keep them going for quite some time. But here in Cameroon, if one ship just fails to come across with rice, there will be an uproar in the country because we have no food security, we have nothing. So what you are even calling agriculture in Cameroon is not agriculture. It is
survival farming.
It is survival farming. What do I mean? The primitive man started to domesticate and do farming and so on. So farming is a way of life for everybody. But what we are saying is that farming has gained scientific impetus so that you can grow a lot of crops using very little physical energy. You use but your mind, you use but tools, you use things and so on and produce more. But here, a whole village has to go and dig down a whole hill and produce very little. So it's labor intensive for nothing because we are not using our intelligence. We are not using technology. That's the problem with us. So do we have agriculture in Cameroon? Yes. Is it the right agriculture? No. Why? Because it's unproductive.
It's unproductive. What stops you people of the intelligentsia to be able to push government to invest in this sector?
It is, again, like I say, when you have gone to school and gone away from the memory, even if you want to memorize what you were told that it takes 2 seeds to be put in a hole for you to have a cup, a conda will give you 3 cups of maize. You should not just take that 2 seeds of maize and put, and then you go and fold your hands and you wait. You should be able to understand that context. Context means that not the whole village has to go to a plot. There should be some people who should be there to start exploiting how to transform that, to call a value chain, in terms of people who are going to do the preparation of the soil, people who are supposed to look for the right seed, people who are supposed to look for the right market. Because at the end of the day, we should be producing what is needed and what is exportable based on the right conditions that it takes for those things to be produced, because we are all specialists and experts in our own domain. And then we have to understand that the first place that all of this innovation begins is in our faculties. Our faculties, they can be able to access this information through all the gadgets that have been put at our disposal through human intelligence, which is the internet and the Facebook and the other social media platform. We are talking about using interconnectedness, and because you can have all the certification today without going to sit in any 4 wall of anywhere, and you get the same knowledge. The highest country that is producing patent is Israel. Israel decided to focus. Israel is a country which it was essentially a desert country, and today Israel is food self-sufficient. People confused today, they don't know that Dubai is just a town in the country called United Arab Emirates, because of the wonders that intelligence has been able to transform a desert environment to an El Dorado, a paradise on earth. These are human endeavors. These are the minds that you sleep in the night and dream. And they create. One of the things which I say we should, so that let the viewers also then know that we all have a responsibility. This language that we are speaking, called English language, is first of all not our language. We should be able to go back and imagine those our ancestors or grandparents, how were they living in terms of discovering what they call medication or whatever thing, and they were happy with their lives and all of that. And then we take that, innovate it with our what we call science, and document those things. When we don't document all of those things, we start trying to copy a wrong model, and then we cannot even adapt with it. So you find that at the end of the day, we use what they call hydroelectric energy and the rest. Meanwhile, we are told that we can use the same carbon or energy that we eat, and we can use that to produce energy that we can save the people in our community, and we pay less electricity bill and all of that. Anything that you do that can solve a human problem in your community using knowledge is what we are advocating for, and that's why we are saying that education will only be relevant if we can be able to domesticate that knowledge for the problems of our local community.
That is called education without approved. Is Mr. Fuji Nerus alias Man Must Try, writing from Yaoundé. Good evening to you, Nerus. Good evening, Mr. Liu, and to the seniors in the studio. Your program is actually going well. We now have grown-up minds in the studio, not like those past days, and I want to use this opportunity to wish my sisters and brothers, Ndi Jennifer, Ndi Kelly, and the Achanje, good luck in their various exams, and a happy birthday especially for Ndi Jennifer in Bafia and the Timothy from Bonaberi in Douala. You are fun. Thank you very much, and glad to know that you follow us all the time. Tamfu Jones, who is a panelist who has decided to disappear from the program. Good evening to you. We're glad to know that you're watching us from Douala. You say kudos to all the panelists in the studio. Jones watching from Bamenda. Tamfu, you travel to Bamenda. You have to be careful out there. Take care. Greetings, Mr. Liu and all the great panelists in the studio. Our intelligentsia here are more on liabilities than assets. Educations should be tilted towards technology than general. Pastor Edwin from Douala, Sebek Bonaberi. Good evening to you, Pastor. Honorable, your examples are more quotes on technical intelligence. How many source or training centers have we in beloved country? Okay, now there is a sing-song today on the concept of entrepreneurship. Almost everybody is talking about entrepreneurship. Did the intelligentsia in Cameroon fail in knowing that as an educated person, you should go to school to create opportunities and jobs, and then waiting to be employed by the government?
Yes, that entrepreneurship is the foundation. What is entrepreneurship and who is an entrepreneur? An entrepreneur is someone who has an eye for seeing the problems in the community. He sees the problems in the community. He seeks to understand those problems and all the intricacies about the problem. Then he gets a solution to those problems. Once he has that well laid out in his mind, then he crafts a system that will solve the problem. And he doesn't have all what it takes, the resources to solve the problems. But he is the mastermind who would go to A and say, A, give me this, B, give me that, C, give me that. Then he crafts this system that brings solutions to that problem. And then the community, the environment, the village, the country, or whatever, the people out there, customers, will pay him for bringing that solution. That's what entrepreneurship is all about. He creates wealth. He creates opportunities. He solves problems and makes life livable. So once you go to school, learn whatever, then learn the techniques of entrepreneurship so that you can be able to do this. Don't wait for the government to employ you. Actually, when you take a country like Cameroon, there are about 250,000 people in the civil service, and that's a little bit too much. Ask yourself the question, what happens to the 24 million other people? These 24 million people, they're the ones, you know, they edge out their life doing petty things. But when you have entrepreneurial skills, then you can crank things up, and you can make a lot happen. We all have 24 hours. You know, someone could be digging in a ditch and having a few pennies, but an entrepreneur in that same time can create and generate a lot of money or opportunities because he knows how to use these techniques. And Mr. Kum, before I give you back the microphone, I was just on, you know, my brother here said something, and I want to bring to our attention something that one of the professors said out there, a black, and he was saying, look, Africa, be very careful, because the white man and the other people are using different techniques of colonizing us. They're using the economy to recolonize us. Then we have been given political whatever, but it's nothing without your economy being on its feet. But what is coming now, which is very dangerous, it's two things. Number one, these people are coming and buying our land, and we will soon become slaves in Africa because we will have no land. And most of these people will come and take our land and do to us what the whites did to people in South Africa, especially to the Chinese. The other thing that is happening is with the food. Watch out with our food. And you cannot talk about growing food without mentioning the seeds. You know, when you plant two grains of corn, after 3 months you will have 3-4 cups of maize. That's a lot. And what is happening now is that the white man with their big companies have come and taken our seed, and they are killing our seed. They are killing our seed by doing something. They are selling us their genetically modified seed, which means that our mamas, everybody needs to always go to the shop to buy seeds that come from them. And they have done something tricky to their seeds. For those of you who have been eating, let's say, avocado or any fruit, or even an orange, mandarin, if you take an orange that has been grafted, you realize that when you open into the orange or mandarin, there is no seed in it. That means you cannot grow it back. So the maize or the beans that they sell to you, they have engineered this thing in the laboratory and put something in it they call the terminal gene, so that when you plant it in the first time, it gives you a good yield, but when you try to plant it the second time, it does not do well, and then it dies off. And because they are doing that, they make us now slaves to their seeds. And then the day they fail to sell us their seeds,
yeah,
we are dead.
Who are you talking to? Are you should you not talk to the policy makers?
Yes, I'm talking to everybody now. It's not just policy makers. I'm talking to the young people. I'm talking to the students. I'm talking to the teachers. I'm talking to everybody, because this man was complaining. He was citing a country down there in the southern part of Africa, where the minister and most of the people have studied out there, and yes, they have gone to school of agriculture, but they don't have this hindsight. And you know, just because you studied, and just like George was saying, you study something, they just tell you things there, you come and copy, and you are doing things here, but you don't know that they're nailing you to the cross. So I'm just bringing this to our attention. Let us, you know, use our own schools or research laboratories, take our own seeds, mix them up, and see whether we can come up with better varieties. But we should not kill our own genetic material, because what they are bringing to us will not sustain us tomorrow.
Mr. George, let's look at our intelligentsia in Cameroon, still in line with this spirit of entrepreneurship. Let's look at how they have contributed in constructing Cameroon's economy.
I have a lot of passion when I hear the concept of entrepreneurship. I said anywhere, it goes right to my innermost, because I live it, I drink it, I dream it every day. But let us situate it within the context of your topic. What has been the role of the intelligentsia in driving Cameroon's development agenda forward? Let us assume, from all what we have been saying, they have not done what they were supposed to be doing. So let us see how, because the Cameroon agenda, if we go by the political dictate of the current status quo, which is talking about Agenda 2035, from 2010 to 2020, which is ending, that first phase was supposed to be growth and employment. Unfortunately, we still have the reverse. We don't have growth, neither do we have employment. 2020 to 2030 is supposed to be industrialization. And he will talk about industrialization, he's talking about where the money is going to come from in terms of transforming our primary sector into a booming industrial economy where it will generate sufficient jobs and it will lead to economic growth. Now, there is a marked misplacement of this concept of entrepreneurship, especially today. You move through all the higher institutions, they are doing something they call entrepreneurship. I really hope that they should be doing the right thing that they are supposed to be doing, but it is just because of a fulfillment of a minister's prescription. Entrepreneurship, it is first of all an issue of the mind. It cannot be forced. You cannot be forced to become an entrepreneur, which means that it is something that you have to sleep in the night and you dream about an opportunity and you get up and that night you don't wash your face, you write it on paper and you start designing what they call a business model. How are you going to make money from that idea, from that dream that you had in the night? Come, ask yourself the question today. With this mad rush of paper certificate, with this mad rush of what they call buying the highest number of telephones or whatever, do you have people who are actually thinking about conceiving sustainable industrial base so that we drive this Cameroon agenda for the next 10 years, which is beginning 2021 to 2030? I want to encourage those institutions which are actually going in for some rudimentary forms of technical technology and all of that, because take an example of a simple apparatus like what they call the 3D printer. I'm not sure there is any higher institution safe for Polytech that has that in this country, and they got it through a grant from the Israeli embassy. 3D printer is that type of printer that can print this microphone that I'm talking to after it has been designed from the software that you use in your computer, and you print hard microphone like this and you use. One would not reach that level where you use artificial intelligence and that type of complex technology to start designing things which are relevant. I am saying that go to the social whatever they are selling online and you see the machines that are available. You will not go to a country to still find carpenters using hammer, pump on the wall on the nail, because they are able to design machines that only it enters the precision. We have a problem in this country that we have allowed the entrepreneurial domain to be invaded by people who call them bare-feet entrepreneur or business persons because they have failed in other endeavors. And the people who have gone to school, they think that they cannot also go and sit behind and transform that knowledge that they have acquired practically so that they can serve their community in a very professional and qualified way. We are saying here that the entrepreneurship that is being taught, the same people who are teaching it, there should be an inspiration. They should be able to, because you cannot be telling someone that by studying this thing you can become a billionaire. They don't see million in you. You are a mismatch. Your wording does not sound like what you cannot be teaching someone to make money and they don't see money to you. Like you are a magician. You are like those people who are saying touch one card here, take one, and all of that. It doesn't work that way. They should be able to be seeing you. You say it's not because Dr. Nick is in front of me. I have my own weaknesses in terms of the way the private higher institutions that are also carrying around this thing, because also they are also becoming some of those hawks, some of them, where you have people who just copy from I don't know where and they just adapt it because they want to earn school fee and all of that. But in terms of somebody who actually grows from zero to something in terms of living the practical example, because you cannot be, it is not the entrepreneurship education that makes someone to become an entrepreneur per se. You have to have what they call apprenticeship, hands-on guidance. Then the person sees you working in the field and doing the same thing, and then the person sees that money is coming in, and then the person transforms that to a business model, to a business plan, and all of those things. And I can say that it is not very evident now, but it is coming, because on the positive side, the fact that they are already be aware that they can start training young minds and teaching them the concepts. From the concepts, they will go now to the context. Okay. And from there, they start becoming really money makers. I hope that Dr. Nico is going to design a course called Money. because it's a cost
Good
called
evening.
money.
It's very important.
Good evening to you all. It's Belvian Chofo, writing from Romania. Just finished with my bachelor's degree program and owner of a newly created association called Belvis Home for the Elderly. Talking about creativity and self-employment, I had written this project 3 years ago and started to go around saying I can establish this project and also create employment to others, but now the problem is the finance or support, but I can't have it since I'm not rice. Okay, I think this the spirit we should encourage, Doctor. Mr. Leo, good evening and kudos to our guest in the studio. Chifo is writing from Bomenda. Good evening, Mr. Liu, and to the seniors in the studio. Your program is actually going well. Thank you very much. Good evening, Mr. Liu, and the panelists. The function of education is intensive thinking and critical thinking, and the goal is character and intelligence. Martin Luther King. I believe that this definition is relevant for our education. I'm Collins, writing from Yaoundé. Now, I want us to look at the construction, road infrastructure, amongst other infrastructure in Cameroon, where seemingly we find those who have been trained in Cameroon largely absent in the construction process of this country. When we know that schools like polytechnics have been existing in Cameroon for long, we have the legendary survey schools, they call the Travaux Publics in Yaoundé and the annex in Boya. What is happening? Who are they training? Are they training them to go construct houses?
Yeah, thanks. That's a very interesting question, Kmer, and we'll take time to develop that. But just before I delve into it, when Mr. Mofo was talking about entrepreneur, I just want to bring to the attention again of the public, because the majority of the people we find in Cameroon, it doesn't matter how much money you have. You see a Bamileke man, he might have a lot of trucks and shops and so on. But if he is only going to China and filling containers and coming and selling and getting money, he is a businessman, but he is not an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur should be able to come up with real solutions and solve the problems in an environment. But if you just go and load trucks of rice from China and bring and sell and get a lot of money, trucks of fish and come and sell and get a lot of money, you might be in GCAM, but you are not an entrepreneur. So we should develop those entrepreneurs that, you know, come out with solutions here and solve problems here. That's how you make money. You don't carry your hard currency and go and throw it out there and you call yourself an entrepreneur. No. So I hope we understand that. Now back to construction. You know, for those of us who have gone out, if you have a creative spirit, I would tell you that being here in the third world is the best place to be if you have a creative spirit. Creative spirit in the sense that there's everything to be created here. There's everything out here needs to be created. So if you have a creative spirit, a creative mind, and you have that those entrepreneurial skills, this is the best place to be. It's true that you would have a lot of other problems, maybe environmental problems have to do with policies, people twisting you, and you don't have money to start or whatever. But the real thing is here. You know, you cannot create much in the US because a lot has already been created, and you really have to be a genius to create and shine. But here you have to create everything, including toothpicks. So the place is here. Yes. So when we are talking about road construction or building houses or whatever, it's just one of those areas in which we should excel. It pains me a lot. I think it was still on this TV station where I was recounting to you my frustration when I was driving from Bamenda sometimes, and I saw a Lebanese, was it a Lebanese company or a South Korean company? They were redoing the Yaoundé Bafoussam road. And they were digging and putting, new little bridges and resurfacing the tar and so on. And I was screaming the whole time. I took a bus actually, or was it in my car? I can't remember. But I was very, very angry the whole time I was driving. Why? Because this is a road that had been surveyed, it had been done, and the hard job had already been done. And we have a lot of youths in Cameroon who have no jobs. And we just need to organize them, and they can do these simple things. And then we sit there and we are drinking. Then we take our money and give to those people to come and do little things like that. I mean, then what can our own children do, for heaven's sake? If you are going to bring in a company from outside to construct, let me give you an example of the kind of roads you can construct. There is the
dual carriage, Douala Yaoundé.
No, that's not even anything. You see in that is in Manfred or in Kumba somewhere where you remember where they did some yes, and abandoned them for some years like that. That is the kind of thing you should be bringing Chinese to do for you. Digging that road that is going up to the Chang Hill. Okay, bring them to help you with that if you probably. But level land, when things have been done, and your own children cannot just put that tar, we have failed. Honestly, I feel so ashamed. Thank you.
The paradox with all of that is that the refinery that produces the tar that is used is all thrown in the high sea, because the company that imports those tar, they import a gallon. If you look at the what they call the contract documents, the cost of buying a drum of tar that they use in constructing that road, and what technology that they would have transformed and adapted the Sonara, so that will produce our own local tar from that affluence that come from petrol, because tar is heavy petroleum that we all, because we don't have the necessary machinery, so it all goes into the sea and it is burned like carbon monoxide and the residual pollution and all of that. What we are saying here, so that it becomes realistic, so we are not just preaching mystery and all of that. The issue is that there might be a problem of machinery, but we should say, and this is where the intelligentsia should come in. The intelligentsia should come in with a policy which is a normal practice, that if we are importing technology because we don't have the local machinery, there should be an insistence that there should be a percentage of local content. That local content should be a minimum of 35%, which will be progressively growing. So when a Chinese company is coming to build a road, it should ensure that for every Chinese engineer that is coming, there's an equivalent Cameroonian engineer who is shadowing that Chinese engineer, and they are making provision to take over those equipments as part of the contractual trade, so that the next road, after they would have built it, it should be taken over by those people who are shadowing those people. Because there's an embarrassment in this country that up to today I cannot understand the arithmetic that is going on to make sense. I don't just have to go to math. That's why I just stay away. There's a road called Douala Yaoundé Highway multi-carriage road. That for the past 10 years I've been singing between the road between Yaoundé and Simaleng. It's not going through. They're still about the first phase. And every time, because of the fluctuation of cost and all of that, the price or whatever, they are quarreling every day with people that they are not leaving the highway and all of that. How did the intelligentsia design that project without taking into consideration the element of resettling people and paying them compensation? That up to today we are still quarreling. Today this minister will come and go and shout at them. This governor will come and shout at them. But the people are still on the highway. Up till tomorrow, we are still there fighting to build a Douala Yaoundé highway that was announced when Sabia took his the last but one 7th term of office and used that as a priority grand travel. It is still the first phase is not yet through, and you start asking yourself, are these our engineers? There's even a ministry called the National Engineer of Cameroon. You start asking yourself that, are these people also Cameroonian, thinking that they are going to, after now they will stay in another planet or in another country or they will stay in this country? I think a program like this, we are saying that our own contribution is that let them, from what has been happening, they will complain about the machinery because we don't produce iron and steel. We don't have an iron and steel industry in this country, which is also an aberration because the raw material for producing iron and steel is found in the east, iron, which is what is used to transform to steel. By the way, the highest shipbuilding country in the world, which is South Korea, does not have a single metal called iron. The best furniture manufacturer in the world, China and the rest, they don't have a single stick standing as a tree. So you start asking yourself, because they're using the intelligentsia.
Okay. Greetings to all panelists. The earlier the regime avoid consulting politically and armchairs political opportunists, the better. If not, we are just crying over spilled milk. Special thanks to Dr. Nick, always being a progressive CPD militant, by Fcfa Grigri, writing from Pomenda. Good evening to all. I love the program today. It's very educative. It's Elvis Elat writing from Boya. Elvis, good evening to you. Greetings. Mohammed Gaddafi wanted to empower Africa. He had the plan to create a united Africa with good economic systems, but not just a handful of Africa presidents supported his ventures. That's why new colonialism is inevitable in Africa, making Africa a shithole country. Tabot Machiavelli is writing from Yaoundé. Good evening to you, Tabot. Mr. Liu, these are the minds our country should promote. Elvis is writing from Limbe. Dr. Nick Ngwanyam, Cameroon is plagued with what is commonly called bad governance for decades now. Are we saying that Cameroon is not manned by the intelligentsia?
Yes, again, if you on our fingertips, we want to find out what are the problems in Cameroon, you know.
Can the intelligentsia not fix that?
They cannot fix it because they don't. Again, that intelligentsia, you have just gone to school, but school did not go through you.
Mm-hmm.
So just because you have a big certificate and you have something to your name, but if your studies are not part of the truth, if you didn't study principles in truth, and if you just cooked yourself through and you came out the other way and your character is not good, you cannot fix it. You see, because when you go to school, at the end of your studies, who you are, 25% is made up of what you studied. 75% of who you are is your character. So you could still have people who have studied, but their character is zero. That means they're not dependable, they're dishonest. And so when you're dealing with those kind of people, they can never fix a problem. If they lack love, they are dishonest and so on, they will just be intelligent thieves. And if you have a lot of those, then you end up with a system of bad governance. You see, President Paul Biya, he puts them there, he catches them, locks them up, and thinks that people will change. No, the bad habits still go on. COVID money comes, people put it in their pockets. They want to do construction, they are putting in their pockets. So it's this kind of thing. It's not what you are called, you know. It's very jittery these days that you don't. If somebody showed up even with a gendarme behind him and he's telling you a story, you need to think twice because people don't have character. It's very, very unfortunate.
Mr. Liu, love what you guys are doing. The government knows what to do. It's just greed. Ashungwa is writing from Muya. Mr. George, what about the intelligentsia itself and research? We've not seen a lot on that, though there are some grants that have been won in Cameroon. Would you want to tie that again with a lack of patent from Cameroon? Patent rights?
You see, let me just say something which the French people are catching up now. France today is promoting what they call selective immigration. Mm-hmm. You know why they are doing that? For the past 20 years, if no Frenchman has won a Nobel Prize related to hardcore science and some of those very complicated disciplines. So now they are promoting what they call now selective immigration. They come to their former colonies, identify strong brains, and then take them and go and provide them with all the facilities for them to work in there, especially those in IT and the rest. The issue here, I remember in the course of this program, I told you about the role that the San Francisco University plays in making Silicon Valley what it is. That is what is lacking with our intelligentsia, is that there should be an institutional leadership. Mm-hmm. When you go to a university like that of Boya, they, at least I know that they have something they call a DNA lab that can be able to identify or differentiate who is the sex or the father of the child and all of that. And there's something with research that research is not fundamental for just accumulation of those things in the laboratory. They have to promote it, which means they have to have also a strategy to be communicating findings and some of those patterns, because patterns what is intellectual property right, which indicates that the source of the knowledge that people are, the prototype that people are developing now to sell as a product of science was produced by a particular scientific laboratory. But that is not absent, based on the fact that most of our intellectual intelligentsia, they also focus on the easier things. They are interested in teaching, which is just one of the raison d'etre of a university. A university should have 3 arms: teaching, research, and community development. But the focus all of this time has been on teaching. At the detriment, ask yourself, what is, besides the salary that they are paying to teachers, what is the other amount that's allocated for research and community outreach in most of our universities? I know universities that that are equipped with endowed with a budget of 16 billion. Go and find out how much goes for what they call administration, support staff, operations, and all of that, and how much is allocated for research. So it's also the absence of that institutional leadership to apportion and emphasize. Because how does knowledge grow if we are not researching every day? So it is also, and paradoxically also, most of the head of the universities, there are also people who have probably I don't know, I think some have even 2-3 terminal degrees and all of those things. So it is a challenge to the status quo. The unfortunate thing is that this is a very beautiful country, that when you are in front of a French trained professor, all his examples are from professors in France. In front of Anglo-Saxon trained professors, all the examples are from somewhere, either America or UK. Why can we not integrate these 2 elements and you know, when Dr. Nick says that we are still a virgin territory where a lot is still to be developed, it means that all of those things can be experimented here. We don't need to wait when we hear that they were coming to experiment vaccine for anti-COVID, and then we start shouting left and right, and you guys of the press start saying, no, don't carry as the rest, and we are not doing anything as antidote. Which means we should be able to also have our own experimentation, which is coming out from our own labs, which we are using, because at the end of the day, the university is not complete if they don't have those things that comes along with it. It's not about teaching. So we are saying, and we are encouraging, let us not go on the defensive and say, okay, there is all condemn. On the other side, let the administrators of those universities make provision for research facilities. Let them allocate resources, and especially let them also integrate the element of outreach. University is not a university if it doesn't influence its environment. They should be able to, a university town should be felt by the citizens around the university town.
Okay. Belvi, I'm writing from Bamenda. He says it's created, I'm sure, it's created degree program owner of a newly created association called Belvi's Home for the Elderly, talking about creativity. He says he's created that on his blog because of money. At this point, I'm still behind. I'm to blame not being employed, or the government not able to bring out scholars to help people like us for want to change our society to the better. At this point, I'm still behind.
Let me just address that issue.
He says, listening, I have created this association, but I don't have money. Please,
it's not an issue about money.
People should talk about my case and tell me where to go so that this project can be developed fully.
Aging and health. Cameroonians should think out of the box. Look at what Cameroonians don't think out of the box. Let me address this child or this young person who has graduated and is gone through to grade. Aging and health is one of those untapped environments. The aged are one of those group of persons who have been able to be fortunate, especially those who are they call old age, who are about 70. these are people who were fortunate, who were not affected by the crisis of the late devaluation and the rest. Some of them had already thought wise and gathered sufficient resources and all of that. But these people now today, most of their kith and kin, they are actually out of their immediate surrounding, other than Europe and the rest. So these people are actually needing people to accompany them. There are simple things for the aging that we can actually. I used to tell my church people that, look, if the creativity of preaching, you can make a special site and you have a special session, because one of the good things about the old people is that they know how to do gratitude. They know how to say thank you. If you design certain things, I know of a girl in Boya who left one of those medical school, did geriatric nursing. This girl has been able not only to attend to a lot of the aged in the community of Boya. She is traveling now around Africa now, only sharing her experience. Because the agent are sponsoring her, they are inviting her every day, because the agents are living a solitary life today, because they cannot catch up with all of this, our mad rush of technological innovation and the rest. Let this girl or boy identify, let her take her time. She has the knowledge of inquiry, identify some of the agents in her community and start working with them first on voluntary basis, because she will not lose anything. Those people first of all feed her, they will even pay her transport. And by the time she becomes child relevant and useful to them, she will say they will gather themselves and contribute money and start giving that girl a salary.
Making reference for other persons.
To meet them.
Okay. I hope, Belvian, you've gotten the information. Good evening, Mr. Liu, on the panel. In the studio, Tala Tata Napoleon from Tundi Ndu subdivision. I am a kind listener of your program. If developing Cameroon should depend on the intelligentsia, I'm afraid we will never go anywhere, since more than 80% of Cameroonians are foolish. Greetings to Dr. Nick Angwanyam. Doctor, my last question to you, probably, if time permits, I may come back, but I'm sure we don't have much time. I want us to look at the intelligentsia and the providing solutions to crisis.
Which
crisis management in Cameroon? There's crisis in the southwest and the northwest region. We have the post-electoral crisis between the MRC and other parties with the regime, and a host of others. Where has the intelligentsia positioned themselves to try to salvage the crisis that have been rocking this nation for so long?
Well, you see, there is no community under the sun without crisis. It doesn't exist. But the thing is, when there are crises, you should understand why the crises were there. And usually, if you are doing the right thing, you would even be able to see the rainy days coming before the rain actually comes, and you do something to forestall the rain. So, crisis, you don't kill yourself because there are crises. Rather, you train yourself to work with the crisis and overcome the crisis, with the understanding that when you do the right thing, after the crisis you should be better off than when the crisis started. So technically, actually, there are a lot of opportunities hidden in crisis, and when crisis come, people who are prepared and know how to because by crisis you mean problems. When you're an entrepreneur, entrepreneurial, you have skills and so on, you actually go out looking for problems. True. And you welcome problems, because those are opportunities. True. So if we have been having a lot of crises in Cameroon and not being able to solve them, is because, like I said, we don't operate in truth, we don't operate in love, we don't operate with merit, we don't respect, and we use politics to try to solve everything. And our intelligentsia try to use politics as a milking cow. That's the milking cow that they have to go to be able to feed their ego, feed their bank accounts, and buy themselves big cars. They don't know how to generate their own money from elsewhere to do their own things. So they try to use the politics, because politics gives you access to resources of the nation to steal and plunder and so on. So that is the major problem. It is this greed that has come in Greed has come in, lack of capacity to actually make things happen, or lack of strategies to solve problems. So people are using politics now, to suck the system dry, and that's where the shoe pinches. Before you take the microphone from me, I'd like to say one thing too that we ought to correct. There has been this thing of NGOs all over in the country, and that thing of NGOs, the question you want to ask, how are NGOs really solving problems in the community, or are those NGOs created just as a means of having jobs? Are they for real? There are problems with that too. So these are some of the areas where people just do things just for the sake of doing them to see if they can get bread on their plates, but they are not convinced about what they are doing. And I just want to speak again to this young person from Bamenda. Be convinced about what you want to do. Have passion for it. Don't ask for money. If you put money before what you want to do, it will fail. And don't blame anybody for not giving you money, because nobody is going to give you money. If you are waiting for the government to give you money, forget it. If you are waiting for some NGO in the US to come and give you money because you're looking after old people, there are old people everywhere, forget it. You need to come out with something from yourself and begin to burn that midnight candle. Begin to sacrifice. Begin to go out there and punch. Begin to do things. If you have a meal to eat, if you go and you look after some old people, if they give you something to eat, share it with them. That is your pay for that day. Keep doing this and building up, and one day you will see how to do things without asking anybody for anything. Okay. Start small and grow.
Good evening, Mr. Liu and partners. I wish your program can change our country. And hello to Dr. Nick, a CPDM with honor. Diane is writing from Obala. Good evening to you, Diane. Hello, please ask your invitees why they keep being afraid to call names of their targets on set. We need to replace worn-out machines with new ones in Africa. Tita Bandong Eric writing from Bonaberry. This one is Kitunda from Douala. Great job from all of you guys in the studio. I always wonder if debates like this actually mean anything to our top officials. Mr. Kumbert, why is it that intelligentsias of other countries, the likes of Lumumba, have publicly identified the problems of Africa education, but our own policymakers seems not to see what others still in some African countries are elaborating on? Martin, that is my last question to you.
The question from
yes.
Just as a question as a journalist, I answer it.
No, the question I'm sure I asked it already. Why is it that we have identified the problem with our education, with our system of education, but seemingly policymakers and core stakeholders in education are playing blind? They seem not to be seeing what everybody has identified as a problem, like what the Zambian, I don't know whether it's a professor or a lecturer, said earlier on.
There is something that is happening in this country, especially Cameroon, that people are not seemingly to take into consideration. The IPES, what they call the private higher educational institution, they have come to, those ones which are serious. I'm not talking about those other business people who have come to also join the bandwagon of stealing by trick. The real higher educational institutions, those private ones, they have come and tilted the dynamics of higher education. Formerly, higher education was just there with the classical first degree in this history, those subject oriented certification. But with the IPES now, they have come now with interdisciplinary degree. You have find institutions giving a BSc in entrepreneurship, BSc in human resource management, and all of those type of things. It has also transformed the thinking now. You see, a parent will be ready to sacrifice a 500 to 1 million to send his or her child to a private higher institution rather than go and pay 50,000 for the child to learn from a state university with the classical old-time straight-jacketed type of thinking. But you see, even in that, many persons, because of the poverty also, they have not been able now to also seize the opportunities that have been created by the numerous creation of the more than 200 or 300 private higher educational institutions. But I think that the future is bright, because with the trend I see and the impetus brought in by the private higher institution, Cameroon will fast track its development endeavors, whether we like it or not, because the people who are coming out from those private higher institutions with the sacrifices they are making, there's no way they will come and they will not make a difference in terms of getting a return on that investment of the fee that they pay in those private higher institutions.
Okay, tomorrow in the program we are going to be asking whether professional education is the pathway to Cameroon's emergence. We are going to explore what our professional education is all about, and looking at how it can help propel Cameroon towards its meeting its vision of an emerging nation by 2035. We want to thank our panelists for today. Dr. Nick Ngwanyam, thank you for coming and talking to our televiewers.
It's been a pleasure being with all of us today, and you know what we are saying today. Just consider it as a discussion in an amphitheater. And if you found something useful, please, stick to it, put it to use. And if we don't change, we are dead. There's really something wrong with our country, and we ought to change. And that change starts with you as an individual. Do the right thing. Stick to the truth. Do it in love, and don't try to cut corners. Don't cheat, and study some technology and put that to use. Read entrepreneurship. Have emotional intelligence. Know how to communicate with people. Don't try to play tricks. And if you went to university or whatever and studied and you cannot solve a problem, you have a problem.
Okay. Equally, thank you to you, Judge Mr. Mofo.
Yes, and I have this assignment I want to give to communicators. There is a difference between communication in crisis and communication for crisis. Dr. Nick said something here that crisis also comes along with opportunities. Let journalists identify those opportunities that have come along with the numerous crises in Cameroon and communicate that for the average Cameroonian graduate to take advantage of those things and design his own niche to make a better living or better life for himself or herself. I want to thank you for the invitation, and we hope that we've added some value to some people's lives this evening. If not, we should be able to get a feedback through you, and we'll see how we can be able to improve on next time.
Thank you very much to you all who took time off to watch this edition of the program, especially to you who sent text messages as a way of contributing to the debate for tonight. We want to thank the production team and to the management, and to you, Tabi Dambe Bryant, who is supervising our work out here. Stay blessed. Bye-bye.